What steps can you take to make your shifting more precise, more efficient, faster, just overall better? Now, this is not a video about how to adjust your rear derailleur or anything like that. It's just some details, tips and tricks that you can take in order to make your shifting overall a lot better, or maybe even correct some ghost shifting, etc. I already did a video about the rear derailleur adjustment. You can check that out here. And also the ghost shifting part, I covered that in that video right here. Now let me get into detail. Of course, in the ghost shifting video you can see, and this is the most important part, and that goes for mechanical and electronic shifting. Now you have to have your derailleur hanger really on point, extremely precise, parallel to the cassette. You can do that with a tool that I showed in the video about the ghost shifting, and this is really the most important part, that your derailleur hanger is really on point. The more gears, the more important it gets. So if you have a 9-speed road bike, it probably will be okay if the derailleur hanger is a bit off, but if you have 12-speed or even 13-speed nowadays, you really need that on point. For my part, I have a 12-speed Super Record from Campagnolo, and you can see the derailleur is pretty big, pretty large. It stands. It has a lot of material in the wind and it's really exposed. It's not heavy, but it has a lot of leverage. And with 12 speed, it's really not that easy to set your shifting up perfectly. So let me demonstrate what you need to do besides the derailleur hanger. You see the rear shift cable housing is pretty long because the derailleur is pretty far away, and also the entry of the cable housing is pretty far down. Let me compare that to the rear derailleur from Shimano Ultegra. On this Cannondale Synapse, we have a pretty small short cable housing, and also the housing and the entry into the frame, they are pretty close and they are pretty far apart here. So the second point will be have your cables and your housings really perfectly dialed. That means that the length needs to be perfect. You don't want to have a too long cable housing that does extra curves. You just want it straight out into the curve, straight in again. Also here you can see we don't have too much, we don't have not enough, we just have the right amount of housing. It goes straight out into the curve, straight down again, and it doesn't go back here with extra curve, the curve out like that. Now of course the length needs to be on point. Where you cut the housing, it really needs to be filed flat so that you don't have excess metal sticking out like that. Perfectly flat. Grease your end caps like this so that the cable housing nicely slips into the cap. And there's a bit of a debate whether to use metal or plastic cap. Metal of course will be sturdier, they won't split. Then again, I read that metal caps could eventually have more friction if the cable rubs on the metal part, and that plastic end caps have less friction, which would be a point for the plastic caps. You have to consider other points as well. For instance, that the plastic housing can break much sooner than the metal caps. Also, a really important tip: before changing your inner shift cable, be sure to lube your shift housing before you enter the inner shifting cable. You just have done everything possible, and the cable really runs as smooth as possible. Then of course always check that you have attached the shift cable how you should, because you have a little carving inside the plate where the screw goes. And if you would check like 50 bikes with a rear derailleur like that, you could probably find a bike where the rear cable is attached wrongly to the rear derailleur, and this will hinder perfect shifting. So you really need to place it how you should. You can always read the manual. This is the best way to go in my opinion. This is especially true for front derailleurs from the Shimano generation, like the 9000 Dura-Ace or the 6800 Ultegra, where you have this design of front derailleur. You see that the leverage is quite big. Then you need to decide where to place the gear cable, and you get a little plastic tool with the front derailleur, so you can adjust the cable where it should be, because the angle can be quite different depending on the frame. It is really important to consider if you want perfect front derailleur shifting. Of course, then we have some general tips like keeping your jockey wheels as clean as possible all the time, keeping your chain clean, your cassette clean, and of course swap out those parts when they are worn out. If you have any more questions about shifting, don't hesitate to ask me. This will surely not be my last video about shifting, because it's really a complicated process, especially with the 12 and 13 speed drivetrains that we have nowadays. Thanks for checking out this video, and I'll see you in the next one.